About 5 years ago, my girlfriend Sierra and I pulled onto this property and built this cabin. This was raw land when we bought it, so there was no land cleared, no driveway in, or nothing. But I'll share photos from the last 5 years or so, and you can see exactly how we built this thing and kind of what it takes if you're someone that wants to do this. So we closed on this land in the middle of winter, and we were pretty excited to get on the land and spend some time there, so I ended up building this tiny little shack on top of an old snowmobile trailer. We shoveled off a little spot just to get this on the property and slammed it in there and threw a wood stove in it, and we lived in this for several months while we waited to build our cabin. It was pretty small in there. It was about 8 foot by 12 foot, and this was cheaper than buying a camper, so that's why we went this route. Once the weather got halfway decent, we started clearing land. Cut in a little driveway and started knocking trees down, and these trees were bucked up into firewood and heated us the next winter, of course. It was pretty fun because even though we couldn't build yet because the ground was still froze, we still felt like we were doing something and getting something done. So we spent the day cutting trees and spent the evening sitting by the fire, burning all the limbs. As soon as the ground thawed out enough for me to get a shovel in it, we started our foundation. So this foundation is about as simple as it gets. It's just pads, didn't pour any concrete at all. You can buy these pavers at any box store like a Menards or Home Depot. And basically all you do is throw down some gravel, level it out, set your pad on top of the gravel, and then level the pads off with each other. And here's a look at them all in place. And once the pads were all in place and level with each other, I built them up with these concrete blocks, just to give me a little bit more height. So then it was time to build the beams. So there's 3 beams that hold up the cabin, and they sit right on top of the pads. And the beams are 3 2x8s nailed together. And the cabin is 20 feet wide by 32 feet long. So I have 5 pads on each beam, so it's supported every 8 feet. And here I'm just showing that anywhere I have a seam on the beam, it lands on a pad. So pretty straightforward, pretty easy foundation for a cabin. And I kind of learned this when I lived up in Alaska. There's permafrost up there, so a lot of places you can't really pour footings below the frost line. So you just build right on top of the ground like this. And by having these beams and having access to them, that allows you to get a bottle jack underneath the beam and level out the cabin if there's ever any shifting. But 5 years later, the cabin is still sitting exactly how it was when I built it. So then for the floor, you just build it right on top of those beams. So I use 2x6s, 16 inches on center. My 2x6s are 12 foot long, so they overlap a couple feet on the center beam and then get nailed together. And because this is off-grid and I didn't really want to mess with running a generator all day to then run a compressor to then run a nail gun, everything in this cabin is hand-nailed. But here's a good look at the floor joists all in place and nailed off, ready to go. So for floor insulation, I laid Reflectix right down on top of the floor joists. And I've built several cabins now, and I'll never use anything different. This stuff is so fast and easy to install. And with this and skirting, the cabin floor is warm, even at 40 below. And here's a good look underneath in the crawl space. So plenty of room for storage under there, or if I need to get under there to add plumbing or fix something. So there it is, all complete. Got a nice level platform to start building walls. I had never built anything this size before. I had built smaller cabins and, outhouses and little sheds and stuff, but really it's the same exact thing as that. It's just on a bigger scale. So that's kind of a great way to learn if you're intimidated about building something. Start off by building your outhouse or a chicken coop or a small shed or something. And then you can kind of learn how everything goes up and how it all ties together. And then when it comes time to build your cabin or your house, it's the same thing, just bigger. So this was springtime in northern Minnesota, so the weather's kind of all over the place. It'd be snowy one minute and then 70 and sunny the next. And here we are getting ready to stand the last wall up. Once all the walls were up, I went with T111 for siding. And I'm kind of a fan of it because you slap it on, nail it to your studs, and that's it. You just got to stain it or hit it with some sort of waterproof sealer, and you're done. There's no OSB, then house wrap, and then siding. You just slap this stuff on and you're done. And it looks good. And once it's all nailed off, you just go around with a sawzall or a chainsaw and cut out your windows and doors. So the roof was quite the deal. It's a 12-12 pitch though, so it's just a 45-degree angle up there on the ridge board. And then you figure out your bird's mouth, which sits down on your top plate of your walls. But kind of just got one that worked and then traced all the rest of them out and nailed them off. This was my least favorite part of the build. I mean, it's rewarding because you're getting your roof on, but I'm not a huge fan of heights, and kind of always in an awkward position, especially hand nailing. Once I had all the rafters up, I filled in my gable studs, and then I was ready to start skip sheeting the roof. So I used 1x4s on this build. You can use 2x4s. I spaced these every 16 inches, but you could just do 24 inches. And then once you have all those nailed through your rafters, that's what you screw your metal to. And getting the metal roof on, that was a big accomplishment, getting that over with. Then it meant the project wasn't getting rained on anymore, we weren't getting rained on, tools weren't getting rained on or snowed on, so it was a sense of accomplishment to get that done. So we stained the cabin a brown. This color is called Cordovan leather. So that sealed the T111. It also has a UV protectant in it, and then for the trim, it's just natural wood, and then we just hit it with a clear sealer. Then we built the porch, and then after we had the inside insulated and wood stove installed, we now had a cozy cabin to live in. So I'll share some shots from our first winter. We just have wood stove heat, so firewood is a pretty big part of our lives during the winter time. But I enjoy it. It's a good workout. It's nice to be outside, working hard in the fresh air. And there's nothing better than sitting by a warm, cozy fire on a cold winter day. So for our power needs, we have a small solar setup that charges some batteries inside the cabin. And when those get low, we can charge them off the generator, which we have to do quite a bit during the winter time because there's not much sun. For our water needs, for years we collected rainwater and melted snow during the winter for bathing and washing. And then we would haul in our drinking water. Here's me throwing some boiling water up into the air on a cold winter day. It's a really rewarding feeling, just showing up on some land you just bought and building your own cozy cabin that keeps you nice and warm during the winter. It's a pretty cool sense of accomplishment. But it's a lot of work, and the work never ends. Every year we come up with projects that we want to get done to improve our lives. And kind of the whole point of this whole thing is to do it with cash out of pocket, so just little by little each year you just keep chipping away and make improvements as you can. So after living here a year or two, one thing we wanted to do was add a roof over the porch so we could sit out and watch rainstorms. Another upgrade I wanted to do was build a woodshed close to the cabin, rather than having my firewood stacked out in the woods with a tarp on it. And I didn't want it to have to cost very much money, so I just went out in the woods and cut trees, peeled the bark off them, and built it out of logs. So the only thing I have into it is just some nails and a tarp. And it's always a rewarding feeling in the springtime when the woodshed's full, knowing that the heat bill's paid and you're going to be nice and warm during the winter. So after a couple years of melting snow, I had enough of that, and we had saved up and got a well drilled. And that was awesome. So we now had water on site whenever we wanted it. Didn't have to rely on rainwater or melting snow. And it's good drinking water, and we can run it right off our generator. And it doesn't freeze during the winter, so we can use it all year round. Well, then we found out that we were going to be having a baby, so it was time for some more room. And since we were starting a family now, I did this 16-foot addition onto the cabin, so it pretty much doubled the size of the cabin. But I did everything the same way that I built the original cabin. And this was just last spring, so this addition's about a year and a half old as of right now. And I had never added on to a place like this before, so this was a learning experience for me as well. But it's pretty much like just building another cabin onto the cabin. But that's what I really love about this lifestyle, is there's always something to do and always something to learn. Once the windows were in and it was all sealed up and weatherproof, it was time to cut the opening and make it one big cabin. We were going to need a way to heat it though, because I didn't think the original stove in the main cabin was going to heat the entire place, so I ended up getting another little wood stove. I get these stoves from a company called Northwoods Fabrication, so if you're in the market for a stove, check out that website. So we now have 2 wood stoves heating the cabin, but it keeps us plenty warm, and I like heating with firewood. So last winter was the first winter with the addition, so that was, again, kind of a learning experience, trying to see how much wood we would go through, but made sure we had plenty. And then the last weekend of deer camp in November, our son Stanley was born, and we had officially started our family. And that brings us to now. So we're still at it 5 years later. Looking at some of these old photos, it's crazy how far we've come, from this just being a piece of land with nothing on it. It's been a lot of work, but I wouldn't trade it for anything. We absolutely love it, love the lifestyle, love staying busy. Gardening, hunting, fishing, heating with firewood. I think it's a pretty healthy lifestyle. So if you are someone who's thought about doing this, my advice would be to just go for it. Step 1 is just deciding to do it and then going and doing it. But 5 years later, we're still at it, and now we have our family started, and we're more excited about it now than ever. But wanted to make this video and kind of give a little 5-year review from when we bought this property. I appreciate all the support, and thanks for watching.